Welcome to tonight's video on section 2.4, dividing polynomials. First, we're going to talk about how to divide polynomials by long division. And this is where you take and first arrange the terms of both the dividend and the divisor in descending powers of any variable. So for example, I take the x plus 3, and notice I wrote it in descending powers because it's x to the first and then 3 is the number, divided by, and then x squared plus 10x plus 21. So the terms are in descending powers of the variable. Second, I'm going to divide, let's see here, I'm going to divide the first term in the dividend. So notice this is the dividend right here. The first term in the dividend by the first term in the divisor. So you're going to take x squared divided by x. And the result is the first term in the quotient. So x squared divided by x is just x. So notice I'm going to put that x right there. So then I'm going to take, and I'll rewrite it here. So I had x. So I'm going to take that term, that x, and multiply it by x plus 3. So I'm basically going to take x and multiply it by x plus 3. And that gives you x squared, because x times x is x squared. And then x times 3 is 3x. And notice I lined up the like terms. So then step 4, after I do that, and notice I'm just breaking this up for you. After I do that, I'm going to subtract. So x squared minus x squared, notice, cancels out. 10 minus 3 gives me 7x. Then step 5, if you notice, says to bring down the next term. So I'm going to bring down the 21. So now I'm going to repeat the process. So notice I have x plus 3 times x squared plus 10x plus 21. The x is here. I multiplied. I subtracted. So I have 7x plus 21. And now I repeat the process. So now I look and I divide 7x by x, because 7x is the new dividend. And I divide it by the first term in the divisor. So 7x divided by x gives me 7. Then I multiply the 7 times x plus 3. And that gives me 7x plus 21. And notice when I subtract, 7x minus 7x is 0. 21 minus 21 is 0. So I have no remainder. So when I say x squared plus 10x plus 21 divided by x plus 3, my answer is x plus 7. That's my quotient. So let's do one more here. X plus 9 divided by x squared plus 14x plus 45. So x squared divided by x gives me x. So then x times x is x squared. X times 9 is 9x. Then you're going to subtract. The x squared minus x squared is 0. 14 minus 9 is 5x. Bring down the 45. Then you're going to go 5x divided by x, because remember you do the first term in the dividend divided by the first term of the divisor. That gives you 5. Then you multiply, and you get 5x plus 45. You subtract, your remainder is 0. So your answer is x plus 5. This last one here, if you notice you rewrite it, you're going to have to rewrite in the right order. So it's 2x to the third minus 3x squared minus 11x plus 7, because the powers you want them to descend. 2x to the third divided by x gives you 2x squared. Then you multiply. 2x squared times x gives you 2x to the third. 2x squared times negative 3 gives you negative 6x squared. You subtract. That cancels out. Negative 3 minus a negative 6. Well, remember, negative 3 minus a negative 6 becomes plus 3x squared. Bring down the 11x. Then remember, 3x squared divided by x gives you 3x. Multiply. So 3x times x is 3x squared. 3x times negative 3 is negative 9x. Subtract. Cancels out. Negative 11 minus a negative 9 is the same as negative 11 plus 9, which is negative 2x. Bring down the 7. Then you divide. Negative 2x divided by x gives you negative 2. Multiply. Negative 2 times x is negative 2x. Negative 2 times negative 3 is positive 6. Subtract. They cancel out. 7 minus 6 is 1. So, our answer is 2x squared plus 3x minus 2 with a remainder of 1. We just don't put R1. When you do a remainder, you add and put the remainder over the divisor. So there's our answer. It's kind of like when you do division, normally, you'd go 7 and then 49. So that would be the same as 7 and 1/7. It's the same here. Whatever the remainder is, the remainder goes over the divisor. So let's try one more. So 2x to the fourth divided by x squared gives you 2x squared. So you multiply. Uh, 2x squared times negative 2x is negative 4x to the third. Subtract. That cancels out. 3 minus negative 4 is 7. X to the third. Bring down the 7x. Now, here's the thing. If you notice, when I divide, I get 7x to the third over x squared gives me 7x. So when I multiply, I get 7x to the third, but then here I get negative 14x squared. So that tells me, and notice I have an x there. So notice right here, it went from just being x to the third to then x. So whenever that happens, whenever it skips a power, you need to put a 0 as a placeholder. So notice there's 0x squared minus 7x minus 10. Because that 0x squared will help you out when you get to this situation of 7x times negative 2x, which is negative 14x squared. Notice now it lines up. So I subtract. 0 minus a negative 14 is 14. Bring down the negative 7. And then divide again. 14x squared over x gives me 14x. Or actually gives me 14x squared over x squared gives me 14. And then multiply, so you get 14x squared minus 28x. Subtract, negative 7 minus negative 28 gives you positive 21. Bring down the negative 10. And notice now we can't multiply, so now we have the remainder. So their answer is 2x squared plus 7x plus 14, and then plus 21x minus 10 over x squared minus 2x. That is our answer. Remember, the remainder goes over the divisor. There's another type of division that we can use, which is called synthetic division. Synthetic division is used when you only have a binomial to the first power. And basically, so in this situation here, notice you have x to the third minus 7x minus 6 divided by x plus 2. So it's a binomial to the first power. You want to arrange the polynomial in descending order with a 0 coefficient for any missing term. Notice you have x to the third minus 7x, so there's no x squared. Right? So it's the same as x to the third plus 0x squared minus 7x minus 6, and you're dividing it by x plus 2. So what you're going to do is you're going to take, and basically, you know how it said in the beginning x minus c is the polynomial? So in this case, if it's a positive, that means c is negative. So you're going to take the c term and put it in what I call the box. So negative 2 goes in the box. Also think about what makes this equal to 0. And then write each coefficient of the dividend. So for example, it's 1x to the third, 0x squared, negative 7x, negative 6. And that's how you're going to set it up. So notice I wrote c for the divisor, and then I wrote the leading coefficient of the dividend for the, so that's part 3. So now the first thing I'm going to do is bring down the leading coefficient. So there I go, there's 1. Then I'm going to multiply this 1 times the negative 2, and that's where I get negative 2. Then I'm going to add down. So notice I have this right here. Sorry, negative 7, negative 6. So now I'm going to add down. So 0 plus negative 2 is negative 2. And then I'm going to repeat. So negative 2 times negative 2 is 4. Add down gives you negative 3. Negative 3 times negative 2 is 6. Add down gives you 0. So now we repeat it until everything is filled in. So now here's the deal. If you notice, this last term is going to be your remainder. Your answer here, if this is x to the third, and this was x squared term, and this was the x, and this was the number, well, if you started with x to the third here, your answer down here is going to be 1 less. So it's going to be x squared minus 2x minus 3, and there's no remainder. That's your answer. So let's try again. So here, notice it's x plus 2, so negative 2 is going in the box. You have 5, you have 0x squared, 6x, and 8. So you bring down the 5. Then 5 times negative 2 is negative 10. Add down to get negative 10. Negative 10 times negative 2 is 20. Add down to get 26. 26 times negative 2 is negative 52. Add down to get negative 44. And that is your remainder. So our answer, remember, started with x to the third. So it's 5x squared minus 10x plus 26. We have a remainder of negative 44 over x plus 2. That was our divisor. Now the remainder theorem basically says that the remainder of synthetic division is the same number as if you were to substitute the C term directly in and get the answer. So for example, it says use the remainder theorem to find f of 2. So basically what it's saying is if you did synthetic division with 2 in the box, so 1, -4, 5, and 3, notice what I get for a remainder. So when I bring this down, 1 times 2 is 2, -4 plus 2 is -2, 2 times -2 is -4, 5 plus -4 is 1, 1 times 2 is 2, 3 plus 2 is 5, your remainder is 5. So what that's saying is basically if I substitute 2 into the function, I should get 5 out. Well, let's do the direct substitution just to verify. So 2 to the third minus 4 times 2 squared plus 5 times 2 plus 3. Well, 2 to the third is 8. 2 squared is 4. So then 5 times 2 is 10 plus 3. So this is 8 minus 16, which is -8, plus 10, which is 2, plus 3, which is 5. So notice when we substitute it in directly, it's the same as if we do synthetic division. So basically, the factor theorem says that if you have a polynomial and f of c equals 0, then x minus c is a factor of the polynomial. And if x minus c is a factor, then when you substitute c in, it gets 0. So for example, if I had, well, let me give you an example. If I had a question like this, I said solve the equation 15x to the third plus 14x squared minus 3x minus 2 equals 0. Given that -1 is a 0 of the function, well, if -1 is a 0, that means when I substitute it in, or if I do synthetic division, that the remainder should be 0. Well, let's check. Well, when I do the synthetic division, bring down the 15. 15 times -1 is -15. Add down gives me -1. -1 times -1 is 1. Add down gives me -2. -2 times -1 is 2. Add down gives me 0. So notice the resulting equation is 15x squared minus x minus 2. Now to get the remaining factors, what I'm going to do is factor this quadratic. So factoring the quadratic equation, and remember to factor this, since there's a 15 in front of the squared, you go 15 times -2 gives you -30. And what are the factors -30 that add to -1? They are -6 and +5. So I'll come over here, and remember you rewrite the middle term. And then you group. So they have in common here an x and a 3. So it's 5x minus 2. And here they have in common a 1. So it's 5x minus 2. And so it's 5x minus 2 times 3x plus 1. And to figure out what makes it equal to 0, you're going to set each one equal to 0, and that means 5x equals 2, x equals 2/5, and 3x plus 1 equals 0, 3x equals -1, 3x equal, or sorry, x equals -1/3. So the 3 zeros, they tell you the first one is -1, Then the second and third ones are 2/5 and -1/3. And those are the three answers that it's looking for, because it says, given that -1 is a 0, solve the equation. Well, we found the other two that make it equal to 0. But in order to do that, we had to know what one of them was, and one of them was -1. And we'd use the synthetic division, the remainder theorem, figured out what the resulting polynomial is after I divide, and then factored that one to get our answers. I hope you guys have a good weekend or good evening, depending upon when you're watching this, and I will see you in class the next day. Talk to you later.